All right, class is back. So I want to talk about something important I've been seeing a lot of, and this is the key, and this is the answer, and this is the solution of what not to do. Toxic positivity, being positive no matter what the circumstance, pretending like everything is okay. So let me give you some examples of this. Right? I think what's happened is we've had a big push for mental health. Hey, people need to get therapy. People need to speak with a therapist, meditate, journal, do all of these things, right? Now, all of that is important and is super awesome. But here's the thing that people need to realize. There's a difference between when someone is in a season of depression or there's a chemical imbalance or they're depressed versus there could be a situation. Like you could be in a job that is not meant for you. And what I mean by this is no matter how much thinking positive or trying to cope with this, you're not going to beat that. The job is ultimately going to just drain you of your energy, put you in a depression. So when we talk about toxic positivity, it's basically when people are like, oh, just think happy thoughts, right? Oh, this isn't that bad. At least you have a job. Oh, you're not happy in your relationship. It's better than being single, right? Like these are things where it's like you're trying to cope with something that you can actually change. So let's talk about it, right? There's always a contrast to everything. There's one side of something and then there's another side of something. There's toxic positivity. Now, the other side of this would be like optimism, being hopeful and using solutions. The difference is in the detail. The difference with being toxically positive and being optimistic is optimistic uses hope and solutions, not denial, right? Toxic positivity, why I think is such an important topic is because it's kind of like saying just stay in denial and act like everything's okay or tell yourself all these mantras and you're going to be happy. And that's not how things work, right? So where does this normally show up? People will have a job and you will be miserable. You will be in a position where the job is draining all of your energy, all of your attention, all of your life force. And people will tell you like, oh, just be happy you have a job. Oh, just, be happy you are employed. It could be worse. And it's like, yeah, it could be worse, but it could be better, right? So people will basically ignore all the burnout, ignore the frustration, give themselves some mantras and act like that's going to change things, right? And it's not. Ultimately, what happened with me is I was in a position in my career where I was miserable. Every day getting out of bed was a challenge. Every day I would wake up and I would lay there and I'd be like, man, I got to do this again. And the one thing I had to look forward to is when I would get off work, I would go to the gym for like an hour, 2 hours. I would watch TV. I would drink with friends on the weekend. No matter what all these little coping tools are, they did not take away from how exhausting that job was, right? It was a horrible position to be in. Every day was a battle. And even though I had all the tools to cope with, I still was like in this sad season of just like, man, like this just isn't for me, right? Now, where else does this hit us? This hits us in relationships, kind of what I was talking about, right? When people are like, they could be with the wrong partner, right? And I think that we know. I think that we have, our gut instinct. We have our intuition that lets us know. But a lot of the time, people will give you this like toxic positive advice, like, well, at least you're not single, or dating apps suck. At least you're not having to go through that headache, right? Or people nowadays just want to have fun, or people aren't serious, right? So a person will stay in a relationship that's not for them just because they don't want to experience the singleness that everyone's complaining about, right? So they'll basically say, people will tell you like, oh, just put on a smile, act like everything is okay, right? And what that does is it invalidates your pain, whatever you're going through. You'll see people that stayed in these relationships for so long, and it's basically like, and when they break free, it seems like they've been relieved of like a whole life that they were carrying because everyone was putting it on them like, well, at least you're not single, at least it could be worse. So it's like, yeah, just put on a smile and invalidate whatever pain you're going through and act like everything's okay, right? And then lastly, in yourself, right? I think toxic positivity is this thing where people will guilt themselves when they're not like happy 24/7, and they'll do this thing of like, well, my mantras aren't working, and mantras are basically things that you're repeating to yourself, right? Like you could tell yourself all day long, I'm great, I am safe, I am loved. But if you're in a position where life is not reflecting that, no matter how many times you say it, eventually you're going to burn out on saying it, right? So a lot of times what happened is like when I was on my manifestation journey, when I'm just on my healing journey, And I do believe like healing journey is forever, right? We're always going to be healing. But I think what happens is you have this misstep where you do get in your feelings, you do get sad over something, and then the first thing to do is just to be like, well, it's not that bad, it could be worse, right? And you're not acknowledging like, hey, one, I need to feel my emotion, whatever I'm going through, and that's going to motivate me to make things better. So I'm not being in denial, I'm making the right move and going after something. Now, why this is like such a painful process, being toxically positive, is because it suppresses a lot of like real emotions. And what happens is when you put something off, it comes back stronger. When you put off frustration with your career, it comes back even 1,000 times stronger the next year when you start seeing your friends or family members that went on their journey and they actually discovered what they liked and they went after it, right? That's probably one of my biggest headaches. I was a late bloomer. I feel like I was the last one out of my friends to kind of hit their stride, right? We all graduate college around the same time. Some people got positions handed to them from their parents. And these are like people I know got positions handed from their parents. Other people, they had like this whole parents gave them kind of like a incubator phase so that they can go to grad school. Now, me and some other people, we're working class. We had to work, we had to get it out the mud. You got to work and you got to apply at grad school, or you got to try to find out your path. I think the hardest thing is when you don't know what your path is. So you're in this in between, and then you're giving yourself all the positive tools. Like, oh, it's okay, it could be worse, it could be worse. But then you start seeing your friends climbing the ladder, going where they need to go. And then it hits you even harder, all the frustration you've been putting off. All the times I went to the gym or I went out drinking and I distracted myself, I numbed myself from whatever I was going through, it came back even harder when I saw my friends climbing the ladder, going where they were supposed to go, right? So ultimately, that is a way where it comes back to. And ultimately what it does when you're doing this like always just think happy thoughts is it delays your growth. You want to grow in certain directions. We all want to reach our highest version of ourselves. Now, you delay it when you act like, oh, everything is good, right? Everything is good all the time. And, I'm fine. I'm going to wake up tomorrow a new person. I'm still in this job I hate, in this relationship I'm not happy in, and I'm not happy with myself as a person, right? So those are all the sides of like the toxic positivity. Now, can a person change these things? Absolutely. And here's what I would say. Instead of being toxically positive, be authentically positive. I was struggling, but I took baby steps. And ultimately, once you start the baby steps, the plan starts to form around you, right? I got into grad school. I start doing things that can move the needle piece by piece. I start really researching things I want to do. I started really looking into teaching. Then I get into teaching, and then I'm like, okay, this is good, but I know when I was in grad school, I would always tell myself, once I start teaching, I'm going to also make content. I'm going to get my message out to as many people as I can. Now, the baby steps started to unfold, but the thing is, I couldn't just lie to myself and act like it was gonna fall in my lap or happen overnight. No, I had to be authentically positive and say, okay, I'm taking baby steps. That helped me say no to the drinking, no to the numbing myself, no to the distraction, right? When I stopped delaying the growth, I was able to actually grow. Also get, people that are supportive. I do think that we need community, especially when we're in these seasons where things are just depressing, right? And I think it hits everybody. But you need people you can talk to and be like, hey, you know what? I'm struggling with this, this, and this. Like, let's formulate a plan. You need a support system that's going to actually have your back. People that are actually going to give you honesty and not just fake cheerleading. Oh, just small, it's not bad. No, people are going to be like, hey, look, let's formulate a plan. Here's the baby steps you can take right now. I got your back. We're going to make this work. So these are all of the things I went through, in my healing journey. And I think this is one of the biggest conversations because I've seen a lot of people, they get online, they tell you these things like these ways to cope with things. But what if that is the distraction? What if all of the coping with the problem is delaying you from getting the solution? So that's why I was like, man, this is something that I think this needs to be talked about more. So per usual, when I get the information, I share the information, I reflect on my life. So I hope that it helps.